Yeah, you that. Uh, Thanks for joining us, folks. It's great to see everybody. Welcome to fall semester, and we're going to be talking about foundations of Indigenous language programs here. For starters, let's say hi. We'll introduce ourselves. Talk just however you want to introduce yourself. Talk about what language or languages you are working in. Pick a language and tell us something from the history, from the past, something current, and some hope for the future with that particular language. For example, my name is Kone in Tlingit, or Ejak in Haida, Lance Twitchell. I am Tlingit and Haida and Yupik and Sami. My father's people are Yupik and Sami. He was adopted by Kagwantan, so I'm Kagwantan Yeti. I am a double-headed eagle from the Frog House in Heidelberg, Shukach Adi, Raven Sakai, from the Raven House in Shkut. I started studying Tlingit in 1996 with a commitment to become a speaker. My first commitment was that my grandpa wouldn't laugh at me. So that was the starting point, because he loved to laugh at people all the time. He wasn't mean about it, he just loved to laugh. And then started learning Tlingit. I was born in Skagway, grew up in Anchorage, returned to Skagway after attending the University of Minnesota in the Twin Cities, and lived in Skagway for quite a few years, moved down to Kasan, and while in Kasan I studied Haida with Julie Coburn. It was very fun, and I really wish that I could have continued, and I'm really looking forward to picking up Haida again. Then I went to Fairbanks, studied creative writing in Fairbanks. Then I moved here to Juneau after Richard Dauenhauer retired. And I had an MFA in creative writing, and somehow the winds blew the right direction. And there were 3 people who were applying for the job. There were 2 amazing people who were non-native, but they had PhDs in linguistics, and there was me. And I was very fortunate that I had a real strong connection with students, I had a real strong connection with folks that were here, and I had already been teaching Tlingit in a variety of different communities and settings. And so started teaching Tlingit here, worked to make sure that Haida and Tsimshian were being taught here at UAS, and then made some connections in Hawaii, primarily going to a language conference at the invitation of Zeosh James Crippen, who's a linguist who works in Tlingit a lot, and he is Tlingit. And met some people and saw some amazing stuff. Walked through their language schools and was blown away by what they had, which was basically I saw a 6-month-old, and then I saw someone getting a PhD, and they could do it all in Hawaiian. And I just thought, well, how do we do that? So the next year there was another language conference, and I went over there, and they had these social events, and I found myself, I just sat down at a table, and some people sat down around with me, and it turned out it was Dorothy Lazur, Sister Dorothy Lazur, who was Mohawk, and then it was Larry Kimura, who was Hawaiian, and as the grandfather, although we tried to change it to the godfather of the Hawaiian language movement in Hilo, and then Pila Wilson, Dr. William Wilson, and then Dr. Kawanoi Kamana. So I just happened to be sitting at this table with some of the absolute, and Namaka Rollins was there as well, the absolute leaders of the Aha Punana movement. I didn't know, and I was just visiting with them. And then they invited me to come and to apply for their PhD program in Hawaiian and Indigenous language and culture revitalization. So I applied, I got in, and I just had a wonderful, wonderful time. I learned quite a bit of Hawaiian. It was 5 years ago, so I only know a little bit. But I primarily work in Tlingit. Historically, I think about just how incredibly complex the language used to be. One of my big concerns is that today we're going to lose that complexity. We'll have speakers, but they'll all talk like, kind of kid version of the language. I'm not trying to offend anybody or be insulting, but there's these really high level things that you can do in the language that are very complex and that I think we need to hold on to. Currently, at any given time, we probably have more people learning Tlingit than speak it today. So that's really, on one hand, there's a sadness to it because we're probably down to less than 40, maybe 30. But on the other, sometimes we'll have 100 people on a given night trying to give it a go and learn it. It's very exciting. The future, I really hope that we're able to, across Alaska, restore Indigenous place names so we can stop saying the names of all these dudes. A lot of them had nothing to do with the land. And so, and also that we can just talk to kids. This one guy, he challenged us. He came up here. We're going to read some of his work. But he challenged us. He said, and then we were talking about our language programs. I wasn't there. People told me about it. And he said, do you have any kids that could tell a story in your language? And people said, yes, we do. Yeah, they do these plays and stuff. And I thought, actually, we don't. We don't. I don't think there's a child who could just tell me a story in Tlingit. So that's what I'm hoping, is that someday I'll just be sitting there and some kid will be telling me a story in our language. So that's my sort of hope for Tlingit. So who would like to go next? We're just sharing information, getting to know each other, keeping it real cash, keeping it real indigenous.
Nila toga ya tenaka sai gastachet an aslan medzik tachet ana. Lingit you getangistuchat to gwash cleig tagawe zati tlach chatsitia dachnach chatsitiach zati. I am Nila Toga or Anna. Koi Karn Athabaskan from Caltag, Caribou Clan, and Eak. I study Tlingit. For about 1 year, I've been a bird mom. I have 2 birds.
Ow, fuck.
Let's see, what else? Maui, ka baby, you has to sak. Yeah, you do sak, my birds. Something about my past. I started studying Tlingit in 2017, and at that point, in my own heritage language of Danaka, I only knew some songs. And I think starting to learn Tlingit has sort of guided me into a starting place of learning my own language. So I feel a lot of ways that these language programs down here helped me in my own heritage language learning as well. Something for the future. I do hope, my friend Kim, Nicholas, and I are hoping to start a Danaka language learning circle up. We usually do it by volunteer every year. It's called Danaka Dadini. But I'm hoping to incorporate some of the things I've learned down here into our Danaka language learning circle this year.
Sheesh. Chashi Ish, I see you got your hand up.
Richard Peterson, kind of very, very baby in language. I'm Kagwantan from the Eagle's Nest House, grandchild of Simsian and Haida, and pretty excited actually learning way more about my family and my lineage because I didn't really know some of it, and found out that my great-grandfather, who we thought was full-blooded Tlingit, was actually half Haida, Haldane from Heidelberg. So trying to put all those connections together. Pretty much born and raised in Kasan most of my life, and have been the president here at Tlingit Haida for almost 8 years now. And I saw the course that you'd advertised this, and I'm sorry I missed the first day. I saw this last night and had my staff sign me up today because I'm really trying to take Quicket and Haida in an area to do more with language, be more supportive of language work, language learners. And to be honest, it's all a bit of a mystery to me, some of the components. And I thought that that might come out in these discussions. And so I was excited to see that. I'm really looking for ways to learn to be just more supportive and create more spaces for our language learners and for our speakers. Been really, I'm of the mind that those that have been language learners and have become teachers, that we need to pay them a good wage and make it known that our languages are a priority. Like, you know, you want to go get a PhD and we'll pay you all the money in the world, but you learn our languages and we pay you peanuts, doesn't sit well with me. So I'm trying to be a part of the like systemic change, and I'm hoping to learn from this class how I can do that, how I can be that force of change in the position I'm in. You know, I'm in an elected position, so I don't know how long I'll be in this position, but I want to do the best by our languages while I'm in this position, if that makes sense. And, you know, I've tried to make spaces available, and I get a lot of gratitude for making those spaces available. And I always feel a little guilty because I don't believe it's even remotely enough. And yet our folks are just so full of gratitude just to have a conference room and a Zoom account to be able to meet and do language work. And I honestly feel kind of ashamed that getting so much gratitude for so little when we really should do so much more. So, Kunchish, how?
Jeez.
Oh, and I used to be roommates with Hune, so I expect a passing grade.
Sheesh. Who would like to go next?
Kachzinachsayi, Chukanedic Hatsati, Chai Hit Hunakaudach. I guess something about me. Started teaching at UAS, which is awesome. It was like my 10-year goal last year, and it turned into a 1-year goal. Like accomplished. Started anyway, not accomplished. That turned out really awesome. We'll see. I guess we'll see how it goes. I think it's gonna go great. Can see what I can do about like just getting more language material on the walls, or when Wayne gets back, he's got mountains of info there all over the place. And just making more art is awesome. It's awesome to be learning Tlingit and carving at the same time. I want to keep doing that.
Gee. Yeah, sometimes 10-year goals turn into, here you go. It's like you're standing in a boat and you're like, I would like to learn to swim someday. And then all right, who wants to go next?
I can go next. Nawea, where's this speaker? Nawea, sorry.
Speaker.
Like Park, Aina, Austin Tavern, Dusok, Kogwan Ton, Aya Uhan, Kukiti Dusok, Ha Nakahiti, Akdane Ton, Yadi Hutsiti. What else am I supposed to say? Lingich to Hutu. And I don't really know how long for though.
Oh, yeah.
I've been around a while. And what else? Oh, I don't know. Something about the future, the past, and
Yeah, past, present, future.
right now.
Prompt.
It was a coup. don't know. I've been thinking a lot about uh, the sort of like lateral violence that happens in, especially like the Tlingit language community, and like uh, sort of like where that like comes from, I guess. And like w- I feel like with Tlingit people, maybe we were always a little bit judgy, but like we didn't like tear each other down. Uh, and so like I don't know how to quite describe what I'm trying to say. But like I don't know. I mean, I do think there's this like value of correctness culturally, right? Like if you're gonna, it's like that. Like if you're gonna come at me correct, kind of thing. But also like there's not a whole lot of room in that for us to like I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to. I guess I don't know. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I
Yeah.
guess. Um, and so I mean, I don't know. That's like a right now and maybe from the past thing. But like also I think a lot of the lateral violence is due to just like people I think have a scarcity mindset, where like where there's like only so many resources to go around and only so many speakers, and so like we feel like maybe we have to protect the thing that we do have,
Mhm.
and yeah, hopefully we can let go of that in the future.
Right. Okay. And sheesh. Who would like to go next?
I could go next. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make mine short. Thank you for trying to set it straight. Sometimes it's so hard to put it into words. Goodness, Chase, thank you. If there's something that I can do to help you do that, that would be great. I have extra hands over here. Sani yuchatusak yekna hasati ak kwan. Ayayet yet to hit, yet to hit. And goodness, Chase, thank you for sharing your time with me. I am Lyanna Wallace. I am from Juneau. My family goes all the way back to the stories of when the first lakes appeared and the mountains and how things were divided and how people traveled through. And so I guess that's my way of saying since time immemorial. I'm a little out of breath because I'm walking up a hill. I should just slow down. I was raised on a 42-foot trolling boat, and I grew up with old storytellers. I believe in traditional knowledge. I love being able to convey that information, whether it's just through prophecy or parables or just words of wisdom. But I don't just want to do it as a storyteller. I want to be able to speak my language fluently, and because sometimes the English words don't convey what I'm trying to say. But I also want to be able to do it with a lot of technology. I'm working on a GIS project right now where I'm layering all these different historical documents. And now I want to collect the stories that go with all the different bays and inlets. But my ultimate reason for being in this program is just to develop resources for teachers and students.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Continue my walk.
Yay. Okay. Dr. Juice.
Okay. Tatjus Hinadikian, Gayalas Gusta di Qualagan, di Iyak Lingagan. My name is Tatjus. I'm a Raven, and I'm a man of the Yaklanas clan. When I heard past, present, and future, I thought of the language, so I'm gonna go with that.
Okay.
Like for the Haida people, 120 years ago, you grew up learning Old Haida, and they naturally poured their spirit into the language. And currently we are using a lot of new Haida. Professor Marianne Ignace of SFU knows how to break down Old Haida, where there's lots of verb stem roots with classifiers, directionals, prefixes, and suffixes. And we learn a lot from her. I can't wait to learn more from her. She's one of the few fluent speakers that we have left. In the last week and a half, we lost half our fluent speakers, so we're really at a crossroads here. What would I like to see in the future for our language is to get young students to think and speak in Hatkill, along with using English, bilingual students. It's been proven that they use more of their brain, they're more creative and better problem solvers. So if we ground them in the culture and get them to be bilingual speakers using more of their brain, it's our hope that they will have a better future. And when we had the conference with the Hawaiians, and we got to jump into any room we wanted to, and I didn't go into this room, but Sanja did, and she shared about pouring our spirit back into the language. And I can remember Auntie Elma Cook trying to teach me that, but I didn't get it at the moment. A lot of Haida stories start off with Awash Hagwi'u, but you're supposed to pour your spirit into those words so they're not empty words. I heard one Nani on a tape recording, and she really poured her spirit into the language, and the words totally transformed. So instead of Awash Hagwi'u, she went Awash Hagwi'u, really pouring spirit and feeling, make the language come alive. And Emma did that with me one day at agriculture camp. And I was sharing with someone a Haida story, and I said, Awash Hagwi'u, which I know now to say that those sounds like poor words, like they're empty words. And so Emma spoke up and said, Awash Hagwi'u. And I didn't get it. I didn't get it until the Hawaiian Language Conference, and Sanja shared what she learned about pouring your spirit back into the language, and then ding, 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 I remember what Alma was trying to teach me.
Wow.
And so I'm never going to forget it now. It's with me forever.
Thank you for sharing. Maybe the last time I saw Alma Cook, we were at a basketball game in Craig. We were watching Craig play Mount Edgecombe, and she really loved basketball. And when something went wrong for the Craig players, she would get real excited and she started elbowing me in the ribs. And then we were about in the second half, and I was thinking, how do I tell her this is starting to hurt? Because she was really into basketball.
House to eye.
Yeah. All right, that's everybody in the room. Yvonne.
Jukrin Gunzi, Shalak Nai, Shojri Von Peter, Oji, Oshring Ogotsan Liga Tanangui, Dinji Juk, Agual, I Chan, the Ginjik and Jitchagwal in Chan, Chanan Tananj at O, Guchitwal in. My name's Yvonne Peter. I come from Arctic Village, Guchen, and I'm a student of our language. And also well, I'll do the history, I guess. I work on Gwich'in, so I work on my own language, Dinjijuk. And a little piece of tidbit of history of the Gwich'in language is that in the village I come from, Vashrenko, in English they call it Arctic Village, Gwich'in was the first language that our people were literate in. Because they had translated the Bible in Canada, and it was a Gwich'in person who had brought the translated Bible up into Arctic Village. So we're unique as a village in that we've never had a non-native priest or preacher in our village ever. And the church was run and still is run in our language. And but the language that was written is Dago, which is now a dialect of Gwich'in that no one speaks any longer, and no one uses the orthography of that time either. So it's not really we're among the last of the people that can even read that dialect. So anyway, that's a little interesting piece of history for Gwich'in, for the language. And the current is Tananchato is a Gwich'in language nest. We started with 4 babies between 1.5 and 2.5 years old. It's full immersion. We only speak Gwich'in in the classroom to them we just passed our 5-month birthday. So we're very early, and we're just trying to pick up and learn as much as we possibly can to apply it to both teaching and instruction within the classroom, but also for the parents, because the parents are required to take Gwich'in classes with us, and also for our own staff to be continuing to learn and grow our knowledge of our language as well. And so that's our current, and hearing Hune say that there's more people studying and learning Tlingit than there are speakers. In a way, I kind of think, I wish it was that way for Gwich'in too. And I think that that's one of my hopes, is that over the next couple of years, we grow enthusiasm among our people, community, young people, and others to also start studying and learning the Gwich'in language, so we can have a larger group of us doing this work, because Gwich'in is unique in that we don't really have a full-on dictionary for our language yet, and we don't have a lot of resources. So those of us who are doing work on the language have a lot of work to do. But I'm really thankful that I also, like Chathya Ej, saw this class on a Facebook post and thought, that's exactly what I need, is a group and community of people where I can learn, read, and about ways we can improve on what it is that we're doing at Tananchato. So I'm just really glad that this class is here and to be a part of it with you all. Masi cho dataken jet ganoshish hawa.
Masi cho. I turned the camera around while you're talking, so you don't have to look at yourself while you're talking, which could be, it's distracting to me because the TV's right behind me. I'll show you. Yeah, and thank you for sharing. I'd be happy to go over at some point this semester some dictionary software and how Indigenous communities can and should take control of their own dictionary development, because you'll end up with people saying, don't use my work like that, which is, they try to sort of take possession of the language in some ways, which is really bizarre, but I've seen it with multiple languages where someone comes in who is non-Indigenous, who has all this expertise, and then when they get mad, they take all the data with them. And I've seen stuff like that happen. And it'd be we got to just be making our own stuff and doing it. And if we're doing it, then we're doing it right, you know. So, Masicho. Okay, who would like to go next? It's all the online gang.
Hoki yung stuayu, Gitsbutwada, Diptegu, Simshianu, Ada Sku Gitaganits, Ada Amshawam, Juno, Ligi, Thinga Ani Diwalaku, Ada Zogu. My name is Hook Yunks, David Lang. I'm Simshan, a little bit Tlingit, and I live here in Juneau. I was born in Juneau. I grew up in Washington State in my teenage years and early adult, and moved back about 12 or 13 years ago, and immediately started looking for language resources for Samelgach, the Tsimshian language, and was really difficult to put together or to find materials at the time. After a few years, I was able to meet up with Shagop, Alfie Price, and Nancy Barnes, and a few other folks that were studying Samelgach that put together a group after a workshop, which I was able to attend. And from there, that became the Juneau Samelgach Learners Group, and we benefit directly from Tlingit and Haida's generosity. Chaish was talking about it earlier, but we really do appreciate, because we use that Zoom link and we use that boardroom when we can, or that meeting room when we can meet in person, and it's been we're really thankful to have that space. In the beginning of my language learning, it felt like such a far away thing. There weren't classes available to take that outside of very small regions, and online components and online materials were so scarce. And now I'm so happy to see in the current where we're at now that there is such a swell of support for language revitalization, and that those have expanded out into Samelgach, and that there, as a byproduct of unfortunate times of quarantining and distance learning and everything else, there is such a large group of displaced Tsimshian that aren't near our traditional lands at all, that are looking to learn and trying to find resources, and online connections have really strengthened our language learning groups and helped out people make connection from all over the place. And I think that that's amazing for the future of the language. I just my wish for the language is to have such a casual familiarity that our kids can talk crap to each other playing video games and snap into it and speak right when their grandma's around, if you know what I mean. Not feel like it's a burden or a task to be involved in their language or in their culture. And I know for a lot of kids that's not a burden, but the particular age group that I think needs real focus is that early teens years, where we lose a lot of promising kids that are so good with it, and then teenage years, it's you gotta figure yourself out and go a lot of different directions. But I just my hope is that there's a strong base in the language and culture for kids to know that they have that anchor to fall back on, whichever paths they're trying to navigate in those years. Ganeshish Hawa direction.
Deutschen. Yeah, you bring up a great point, Hokyuns, because that if we want the language to go everywhere, then we're going to have to prepare it to go everywhere. I mean, we've had some of these conversations with Tlingit where there's all kinds of stuff we want to do in the language, and sometimes I think, especially if a language gets endangered, one of the things that happens is it's spoken in fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer situations. So then the final remaining situation is often some sort of cultural ceremony. Then every time you use the language, every single thing is a ceremony. Then the language, it goes through this weird transformation where it becomes too sacred to do anything else in. And we experienced this as we started, there's a population of us that started having kids, and we want to speak to our kids in the language. And I speak to my kids in English, but we had to go to the elders and say, how do you say wipe your butt? And, and they would say, some of them would say, we don't say that in our language. And I'm like, oh, I know there's a way, because we raise kids, you gotta say, I've had to do all kinds of stuff and say all kinds of stuff that I never imagined I would have to do. So it's just part of, little people and their bodies and all kinds of stuff. But there's also this sort of thing that we bring in sometimes from the colonial world, which is body shame and all kinds of other stuff. And it's always interesting to navigate those things, because sometimes we are going to have to recreate it or go to the, luckily we found a number of speakers who, they'd just be real quiet. And then when everybody left, they'll say, I'll tell you how to say that. And then they would tell us how to say, like all these, like poop and pee and just all this stuff that you gotta learn how to say. And so those are really good conversations to have as well, is what is authentic, and then also we're gonna have to come up with things too. Because in some of those, like I was talking to people in Hawaii, they said, well, there were some things we didn't know how to say anymore. So we created ways to say it. We used to say it, but then we didn't know how. But we speak the language, so we made it. And no one can tell us we're wrong, because we speak the language. And so those are going to be really interesting conversations that we'll have this semester. All right. Yeah, right? Yeah, we did that as well. Yvonne, is no kids were raised for 60 years in the language. So there's all kinds of stuff, don't pick your nose and be good. But just also just sort of like, how do you tell kids to do things and not do things? So good stuff. All right, who wants to go? Kaskateen.
Kaskateen aya achsai chapnachatiti yanwasha aya kukitdach deshitanyari aya chat Filipino Dutch friend aya ak ye chat yati. My name is Kaskateen. I'm Eagle. I'm Kagwantan from the Box House. I'm a child of the Deshitan, grandchild of Philippines, and I live out on student housing in Akbe. A little bit of past, I was lucky. I went to Glacier Valley and I had Mr. Chester in second grade, and after that, just that little taste of Tlingit language I got with him, I would bug him the rest of the time I was at the elementary school, and it became like a little inside joke because I kept bugging him about every little thing, since I didn't believe there's not a Tlingit word for everything. And so I'd bug him, how do you say this? How do you say this? And for some reason, the most common one was bench. And so his guess was, and I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Pliade Kaikache, right? Yeah.
Long chair.
Yeah, long.
And yeah, so growing up, I have my grandparents around, both of my grandparents on both sides of Tlingit. And so we grew up kind of just the littlest bit of the language, and we've always known our clan songs. And growing up, we helped start the Juno Kagwantan. And so that was like our big emphasis, was knowing our songs in our family. And so I am working on getting my Tlingit language teaching certificate, but I also want to be able to compose new songs for my clan.
Sheesh. Okay. Thanks for sharing, everybody. Got a few more. Let's keep it going.
Godum Tibin, Ada Scow, Ada Victoria Mccoy, Duayu, gun hada diwa hulkshgu dis Gitlan Galdzub at Shulakshu Shamalia Hishahu Ayak Shamalia Subtainu at Lugal Ayelkanu Shulakshu Shamalia Damadig at Shulakshu Shamalia Simshiana Dao. My Simshian name is Godem Tiben, and my Haida name is Scow, Lugal Indoiction, Duck Juice for helping me translate that. When my sister came to help me out this summer, she reminded me that my Chana Maurice Peel put the name Scow on me, so Duck Juice helped me translate that. My English name is Victoria Mccoy. I'm of the Raven clan from the Gitland Galdzub village, and Hashaku, my wish is that my Shkushkam Hana'a, my granddaughter speaks our language, and she learns it in school. I was very fortunate to work with our elder Madig John Reese and learning our Simshian Nadao, and I would like to pass that on to future speakers, Lugal and Deutschen.
Deutschen. Let's keep it going. Good stuff. Wonderful stuff.
Can I go? Yiskanot Clauchet Duaselk, Kleka Kenach, Rochelle Smallwood, Kwan Eichet, Kline di Yachdehitan. I live here in my ancestral homeland in Akwan Ani. I'm from the Big Dipper House, and I work at Sayek Gastineau Elementary School as a cultural specialist. And I really want to, my dream would be for, well, my ultimate dream would be land back in decolonization, but on the road there, while we still have schools run the way they are, I think it would be so amazing if it was required for the Tlingit language to be taught in every grade level. That way, if they had a Tlingit class from preschool through the end of high school, everyone could be really close to being fluent, I think, and they would all understand everything, and then we could bring the language back onto the land. And I'm really interested in teaching the language through art and theater, and by doing what our ancestors did and speaking in the language. And would love to get more resources out there in the media, since the students love media so much, making modern TV shows and movies and songs, and all in the language. Gunish Cheesh.
Gunish Cheesh. Okay. Maybe 2 left, if I count right.
Ansan Yuchat Duasak, Jake Enach Lori, Kiksadi Ayachet. My name is Lori. I was adopted into the Kiksadi clan by Ray Wilson, and I'm the caretaker of his sister, Gach Ansan, for my work with music and children. And I work at City Tishanach, Glacier Valley. So it's so exciting to see Kaskatin. And I used to work at the charter school in Naweya. So I've learned so much being in these classes. And Hans Chester, working with him and just knowing the pressure and responsibility it is to be trying to teach the language to a school. I remember I was trying to get as much as I could, and he was just pulled in so many directions. And I finally realized, I was like, it's not only his job, it's mine. Lori, take a class, start learning the language. This needs to be the responsibility of everyone who is living on Tlingerani. And I just appreciate this community as I'm trying to learn. And last year, taking Khune's Indigenous Language Methods and Materials class and learning about the Hawaiian model, one thing that really hit me is when he mentioned that talking to the school board or teachers in the school district that we can't teach the Tlingit language because we don't have a word for this. And Khunei's like, well, we have unfriend. And I went, well, what can I do in my position as the music teacher here? And I just went, wow. Well, music is a specialized discipline, and we're teaching violin to all kindergartners and first graders at 3 schools. And why not be that the place to teach violin in Tlingit? And so that's what we're doing. We are, with the help of Kune, Nila Torah, Naweya helped this summer, Dastia, George Holly, Janet Olmsted for sign language, and Nay from Gold Belt. We're all with JAM staff and K1 teachers slowly bringing in the language with the hope that we can teach it through Tlingit. So my goal is that children have the opportunity to learn it early on so that they can be fluent. And I'm also pursuing the teaching certificate because I think every teacher in the school district should be earning a language, Tlingit language certificate because the language needs to be spoken in the schools. So goodness Chish for allowing me to be part of this group, and I learned so much from all of you.
Jeez.
Ja di tau long tukshak e hinnerdi kia ang du hat agen gian flinger dagen hat handlai is usnagen. I said, hi, my friends. I am Tlingit and Haida. My Tlingit and Haida name is Tukshak A. My English name is Sarah Peel, and I am studying the Haida language. And I guess my language dream would be to totally decolonize a campus and have a tribal college and have or be a language teacher or a science teacher teaching in how to kill. So that is my end goal. I don't really know what all would be involved with doing that, but hopefully this class and getting the Alaska Native Language Teaching Certificate will help me along in that journey. Thank you.
Sounds wonderful. Yes, there's science teachers teaching in Hawaiian. So yeah, we can do it.
Lauren Framke, Hinudi Kiaong. I'm from Craig, but I moved to Juneau at a pretty young age, so I've like grown up here, but I spent all my summers in Craig. And my Auntie Norma and Uncle Jeff, they lived in Kasan for a long time, and so anytime there was a car heading out, I would always hop in. So I spent a lot of my childhood in Kasan. And my Auntie Norma knew a little bit of Haida, but no one else in my family really does. It's mostly Tlingit, but I started learning Haida when I was 16. I tried to learn Tlingit, but it didn't really come easily to me. So I tried learning Haida too, which came a bit more easily. But I really love learning Haida, and I've loved all the opportunities I've had to learn Tlingit too. But my end goal is to be a teacher somewhere, but growing up in Juneau, I like faced a lot of racism from my white peers, and so my biggest goal would be able to teach the language, but also to teach young Native students that like it's okay to be Native and they don't need to feel like ostracized or anything like that, and like that's not okay, because I have a lot of other Native friends who felt similarly, and I think it's kind of messed up that Native people are felt to feel bad on our own land. So yeah, that's my end goal.
Yes, and I'm happy to have discussions about anti-racism work and how that also plays a role in the work that we do. I think hegemony is a big term that we'll talk about this semester as well, which I think plays a huge role. I think so for me, there's all kinds of different racisms, and so, but I like to think of things as an active racism or is it a passive racism. So the active racism is, yeah, people being mean and doing all these accents and a whole bunch of stuff that they can get away with in public. So you can, when I was in high school in Anchorage, you could just make fun of Native people in front of the whole class. And I never saw a single teacher say, don't do that. And then, and as I realized what kinds of things were going on, I started to think more and more about how some of this stuff, so the active things are just sort of really a deliberate movement to try and make someone feel like they're less because of who they are. And also a whole variety of other things, which includes direct violence and indirect violence. But then the passive racism is just sort of the things where it's just defaulted into entire institutions. And so some of those things are, when I was talking about starting immersion schools in Alaska, someone who used to teach about Alaska Native people an awful lot and wrote some books about Alaska Native peoples sent me an email and said, well, I think this is great, but you got to get them ready for the modern world and the real world, and I was like, oh, okay, that's racist right there. But it's an undertone. It's more sort of the default type of thing. Or if we said, okay, hey, this school's on Indigenous land. So, I had a conversation with someone who's from a village. He lived in a village, but he's not from the village. And he and I were having a great conversation just about this. And I said, well, I think one of the biggest problems right now is what I would call cultural hegemony. And he said, well, what is that? I said, well, it's just sort of racism and genocide on cruise control. Everybody just does what feels natural, and then everything runs its course and the languages all die. I said, for example, you're a very powerful person in the school, and this was a very powerful person in the school, and he was supportive of the ideas that I was sharing. But I said, so here's your problem. 100 years ago in this village, everybody spoke Tlingit. Now, hardly anybody does. So, to remedy that, the school should spend half of its day in English and half of its day in Tlingit. But if I told you to do that, you'd probably say you couldn't or shouldn't, but you couldn't really give me a reason why. Any reason you had would probably be unproven. Well, the kids won't succeed. That's not true. Look at the Hawaiian school that has 100% graduation rate for 30 years. Well, they're going to fall behind. Again, look at the Hawaiian school, and those kids just go right to college. And so some people will try to articulate it, but I think others, they just feel like you couldn't or you shouldn't. And that, I think, is some of the things that we've got to have these conversations with. So that, I think, a big thing with some of these language revitalization courses over the past that we've had here at UAS, we've really tried to get people ready for those conversations, because you're gonna encounter them. And some of them are more direct, like a certain senator who was from Fairbanks, who's not a senator anymore. And some of them are going to be more indirect, where you've got to sort of deal, there's someone I still have a lot of conversations with here in Juneau who's a powerful political person. And I'm pretty sure that that person's on board with what we're doing, but there's a whole bunch of conversations where I'm always thinking, are they against this? And I'm trying to put my finger on it. And so we're going to have a lot of time and space for those conversations in here. So let's go over what our obligations are, what we're going to do. But we're going to fill it in with a lot of stuff that we feel like we need to do. So bear with me while I find it. I always come to class with 1,000 documents open. I don't know if I really recommend that as a way to operate. Okay. Let me zoom this thing in for folks that are in the class. or in the classroom and online. This is on Blackboard. This is our course syllabus. The syllabus contains the atmosphere we're trying to create in the class. It contains the Zoom link. Let me know if it doesn't work, because I'm pretty good with technology, but I'm not very organized. So I know how to set everything up, but then I'll always put the wrong link in that spot and link the wrong classes and do all this other stuff. There's both an online and an in-person section for this class. If you're in person, we're wearing masks inside all the time. Feel free, if you're online, if you're in Juneau, come join us if you want to. Stay home if you want to. If you're on the in-person one and you feel like joining the online one, go for it. Whichever one you want to do, go ahead. The room can probably seat a dozen people, and then it starts to get into this danger zone where you can't stay 6 feet from anybody. And we'll keep an eye on things. If the levels in Juneau begin to rapidly decrease and the level starts to improve, we might see some changes in that. For now, it's masks. That's a really good question, but the bigger question is, why did I not change this into English? So I use a lot of templates, and so I just grabbed an old syllabus, which was advanced Tlingit, and I write that syllabus entirely in Tlingit. But he's pointing out that I write yucky and yuggy, which are both two different ways to say day, like today, tomorrow, like a day. I used to always write and say yucky, but then when I listened to some people, I started drifting more towards yuggy, but I'm still obviously in a transition. We are, and then the time is totally wrong too, so ignore all of that. We are meeting from 2:30 to 4 on Monday and Wednesday. You're gonna find all kinds, if you've never been in a classroom with me, I do all kinds of stuff where like, all my role models were absent-minded professors, so maybe I'm just trying to follow in their footsteps. Where like, I loved working with Richard Dowenhauer, I love working with Pila Wilson, but they both have these similar things where when you talk to them, you're like, man, but they're so busy that they just got so many different things going on. So some of this is still in Tlingit. I do have office hours, so I forgot to put that on there too. Ignore that as well. Basically, Mondays from 1 to 2, I will be in my office, and I will also be ready to jump on a Zoom meeting if y'all want to chat. On Tuesdays from 4 to 5, I will also be in my office and ready to jump on a Zoom. Anytime that you folks want to meet with me about anything, let me know. We can set up a meeting. I've got some flexibility in my schedule. I got a bunch of other stuff going on, but my primary job is to make sure that I'm accessible to you folks. You got some particular issue you want to talk about, you got some questions you have and stuff. We're going to start Monday's class with going through these 4 quotes on the syllabus. So we're not going to look at them right now. We only got 10 minutes left. But there's some important information that's, I tried to pick like a few things to kind of set the tone for the semester. So this syllabus is on Blackboard. I'll make some corrections to the time and the office hours. And those of you who are reading my Tlingits and noticing I spell different ways, I'll fix that on something else. You guys won't even see it anymore. This is a safe, good space. So I think it's really important as language advocates, whatever our role is, that whatever things are really weighing on us and bothering us and upsetting us, feel free to leave those before you come in here. But we can also sort of talk through some things. But sometimes it's always just so nice to have a space where you can decompress while having some of the bigger conversations at the same time. I really like safe educational spaces. If we disagree with each other on particular things, let's just keep respect as the #1 thing. We're going to have fun as much as we can. We're going to keep it casual, but we'll also sort of just make sure that we're not there's a lot of tension sometimes. We know how much is on the line. And I think it's always very easy to slip into this, well, I have to destroy that person. I don't know why it gets to that. I think it's easier. I think it's all colonial structures, right? Why don't you guys fight with each other rather than becoming sovereign nations again, right? And I think that those things are undercurrents of a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to sort of look at Indigenous language programs. How did they build those programs? What did they do? What kind of steps did they take? What kinds of things can we model from what they did? And then in other cases, sometimes we can't. Hawaiian has this incredible thing. Hawaiian also has 500,000 Hawaiians in the world. We don't have 500,000. Some of us might. I don't know. I don't think there's 500,000 Gwich'in people, but still, we can still look at that. And when we look at programs like Hawaii and what's going on in Aotearoa and what's going on with Sami language, sometimes we have to think, okay, what did this look like when it first started? Because if you go to Hawaii, like when I first went there, I thought, I don't know, it looks impossible to me. But if you talk to them and just keep talking to them, they'll tell you about how they started real tiny and how they grew it. We're going to basically read something, talk about it, and then engage in an open conversation about where we're at, what kinds of things we might be working on. And then we're also going to bring in some folks to talk with us. So we're going to be able to talk to, I don't know who, I'm still scheduling it. Some folks from Mohawk, some folks from Hawaii. I'm going to reach out to some other language programs. Just get them to spend some time with us. There's some really interesting stuff going on all over the place. Variety of language situations, including some people who are bringing their language back from having 0 speakers to trying to create this world where they have hundreds and maybe even thousands. The resources will all be available electronically, so you don't have to buy any books. And they're all in this single Google folder. I'll put them on Blackboard as well, but just to make it accessible, you should be able to just click on this link and it magically transports you to this place where the readings are. They are organized by which week we are in. So it should be pretty straightforward, and there should be only 1 or 2 things in each folder. I tried to keep it real light, but the concepts are really important. In addition, on Monday, we're going to fill out a Google spreadsheet, and we're going to take a look at some methodologies for teaching the language. There are other methodologies as well that are sort of more conceptual, like are we a Montessori program, or are we a Waldorf program, or are we what are the things that kind of drive the program? But then there's these methods for teaching a language. So we're going to take a look at TPR, TPRS, where are your keys, accelerated second language acquisition. Okay, thank you for the information on the link. I will get the link to you folks, and I'll make sure it works on the syllabus. Shucks, okay. Oh wait, let me just put it in the chat right now. Hold on a second. And it could be a sharing thing. I'll try and take a look at what might be going on. But if anyone can, there's a link in the chat and just see if it works. The accelerated second language acquisition, which is also called the Gray Morning Method, the Paul Creek Method, Communication and Language Program, which is also called COLA. I don't know where the A comes from, I guess. Mentor Apprentice Program, Adult Immersion Program, or Adult Immersion Program if you're from Canada. Dual Language Education and Language Medium Education. So those are the things we're going to sort of cover. So what we're going to do is you're going to sign up for a spot, and then you're going to be on a team. We'll figure out how many, I don't know, we'll see by Monday how many total people we have in the class, maybe about 20. So I'm going to try and get 3 and 4 people on each team. And we're going to take a class day, and the whole class will be you folks telling us as much information as you could find about this method. And we'll set up some standards, like who started it, what are the basic philosophies of it, what do you see as the things that really work well, what do you see as sort of the things that might be a challenge? None of these should be the driving force of how you do your program, I don't think. And we're talking about language, like an entire language movement. But there could be that as you as a teacher or you as a school have particular things that you adhere to. By the end, you should be able to talk about what do we mean by language medium program, and what do we mean by dual language program. Immersion used to be the word that people would throw around all the time. It's going to be an immersion, and you go there, and there's all kinds of English and stuff. And so what does it mean, and how do you prepare for community immersions, and how do you prepare for a language nest immersion? And a language nest, ideally, is a language medium program. And then we'll talk about language policy and planning and how to prepare for future growth based on what other folks have done. We'll look at incorporating longevity into your language program. Like, for example, if you're really going to build this language nest, then you got to build the kindergarten. Who's going up? Who's staying? Then you got to build the first grade, build the second grade. So how are you going to make these teachers? And how are you going to get people to talk? That's always one of the big questions. Strategies for engaging in social change. So at the micro level, so like if people aren't speaking the language, how do you get individuals and families to do it? How do you get communities and entities to do it? And then what kinds of changes do you need to make at the governmental level? So we'll talk about that kind of stuff. Show up, read the stuff. We'll see about reading responses. I'll probably just do away with that, to be honest, and we'll just sort of talk about I'll trust that you're all doing the reading. That's what you're here for. We'll see about discussion leading. We'll probably end up doing that, where just to make it so that I'm not talking the whole time, a little bit later in the semester, we're going to take turns being the discussion leader. And I'll just be here as a dude who's talking and listening and just being a contributor. You're going to do a group presentation. I would like you to sort of go find a language program and sort of just give us an overview of it, okay? And we could talk about whether that works best as a paper or a presentation, because I want us all to share it as well. It was really helpful what we did in Hawaii. Sometimes they would give us some to pick from. But like, what's going on with Ojibwe and with their language school? They got a whole language school built, and what kinds of things are going on there? And what's going on, and what's going on with Maori? What have they built and how they do it? What's going on with Sami? What's going on with Gaelic? You know, there's a whole bunch of these that are kind of models right now, but then there could be some other ones as well where you might find out some things about what didn't work for them. You'll do the group presentations, and then what I would like to see is a research paper at the end that just says, after all of this, here's what I'm going to try to do with my language, the language I'm working in. And so we'll talk about that as we go forward. And just in terms of like the page, I'm not that really concerned about page length and stuff. I'm just really concerned about like, this thing serves a function. The whole function of this class is to improve and strengthen language programs, and that's what we're going to try to do. There are a couple important things. I know we're out of time. This is a non-discrimination university, so I like to think of it as trending towards anti-racist university. We're not there yet. But if you are experiencing or you hear about some form of discrimination, please let me know and we can walk it through the proper channels, because there should be no discrimination at this university. If you need any support at all, and that could include counseling, that could include if you have a hard time with any sort of things academically, reading, writing, hearing, anything like that, you have access to a lot of resources as a student. Utilize those resources. Yeah, and we'll have to talk throughout this semester as well about what do we do with all the trauma and what do we do with the healing. Title IX is a lot about anti-rape culture, moving things to an anti-rape culture, and also creating a very safe environment for all students. And that means primarily if you are experiencing any form of harassment, stalking, any sort of sexual crimes, if you inform a professor, somehow it comes out, then a professor is obligated to report that and start moving through the process to make sure that the student is safe. So keep that in mind. That shouldn't be interpreted as, well, I don't want to tell you because now you got to report it. But you have a safe mechanism if you need to get out of any situations. And this does include going through and perhaps pursuing legal rights. There are people who've been banished from campus before for being violent and for interfering, jealous over someone talking to someone and kind of blew up. And I've seen that. Also, this is a good opportunity to say, don't stalk people, don't harass people, don't engage in sexual criminal activity, doing things that people do not give you consent to do. And then there's resources here about all of that. This is Title IX, it's important stuff. Then we get to our schedule. Take a look at it. Nothing to do this week, but over the weekend you're going to read this article called Creating New Speakers. This will show you basically the title or a summary title of the article that we're going to read, and then we'll come in and talk about it. Every other week we'll be doing presentations on the Wednesday class, and so that's going to start 2 weeks from today, so we'll sign up next week. And they're informal. There's no expectation. You want to show some pictures? Go ahead. You're just showing us what you could find. You're going out and scouting out the universe and coming back and reporting to the group. Any questions about anything? Thanks so much for sharing, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you. What is Monday?
Monday.
Class on Monday, right?
Yeah, we have class on this Monday.
Monday after, we have no class. Okay. I know what I'm doing, roughly. There's a verb called ravening. It means you pretend you know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing. And I relate to that verb very well. Okay. Take care, everybody. See you.
Must be a raven thing.
Yes.